The dusty wind of the 1883 Arizona prairies knew no mercy. It paid no mind to the fact that a person was dying under its scorching gusts. It simply carried its eternal song, chasing tumbleweeds across the scorched earth and covering the face of a young woman lying on the roadside with dust. Her name was Catherine Mason. Just a few hours ago, she was full of life, with eyes filled with determination and hope for a new, better world out west. Now, her world had shrunk to the burning pain in her leg and the slowly fading sky above her. Her stagecoach, which she had driven herself from the east, lay overturned a few dozen yards away, scattered like a child's toy. Inside were her dreams, seeds for a new farm, tools, and most importantly money, all that had been saved over long years of hard work. Now, it was all just a pile of wreckage. It was all because of a ridiculous accident. A crazed Mustang that had broken out of a corral galloped right in front of her wagon. Catherine yanked the reins sharply, but it was too late. The stagecoach skidded and flipped over, pinning her. She managed to crawl out, but her right leg was broken, and a sharp edge of a board had cut her thigh deeply. Blood continued to slowly seep through the dust-soaked fabric. She was gasping for air from the pain and heat. Time passed. The sun was setting, and Catherine knew that the night would be her last. Her only hope was a passing traveler, and he appeared. A cloud of dust appeared on the horizon, and soon after, 5 riders. They were moving leisurely, as if in no hurry, and it was clear from their appearance they were cowboys. Worn leather vests, wide-brimmed hats, faces tanned to blackness. Catherine's heart pounded with hope. She tried to cry out, but her voice was barely audible. She raised a weak hand and waved, calling for their help. "Over here. Help." A hoarse whisper escaped her throat. The group's captain, Calvin Cap Blackwood, noticed her first. He reined in his horse, and the other stopped behind him. "What's that, Cap?" asked one of them, a broad-shouldered man with a sly squint. His name was Sammy. "Looks like trouble, Sammy." "Someone's flipped over," Cap replied, his eyes fixed on Catherine. He was a man in his 50s, with a bristly mustache and eyes that reflected a long and difficult life. Catherine felt a wave of relief wash over her body. Salvation was near. She watched as Cap slowly dismounted. "Hey, miss, are you okay?" His voice was dry, but not without a hint of concern. Catherine couldn't speak. She just nodded, pointing to her leg and the overturned stagecoach. A second cowboy, Jess Red Farrell, a tall and lanky fellow, nervously stroked the handle of his pistol. He looked at the wrecked stagecoach, and then at the wounded Catherine. "Cap, we can't take her. We're low on provisions as it is, and it's still 3 days to Tacoma." Sammy nodded in agreement. "Red's right. Her leg's broken too. What are we gonna do? It's a burden." Cap walked closer. He carefully examined Catherine's wound. Then his gaze fell on the wreckage of the wagon. Catherine, gasping from the pain, whispered, "Please, I'll pay. It's in the wagon." She pointed to an iron chest lying on the ground. Cap frowned. He wasn't an evil man, but he was pragmatic to the bone. He knew that in the wild prairies, someone else's trouble was your trouble. A weakened person was a risk to the whole group, a danger that would attract bandits, and simply a delay in their journey, and they had no time. Every ounce of water was precious. "We can't, miss, I'm sorry. We have our own problems," he said, with a heavy heart, but firmly. Catherine felt her heart sink into an icy abyss. It was a blow worse than the fracture. It was a crushing injustice. She, dying from pain, was just an inconvenience to them. He turned away from her. Calvin slowly got back in the saddle. Sammy and Jess were already waiting for him. The third, Louis the Silent One, stood motionless, his face like stone. Only the last one, a young guy with scared eyes named Johnny, looked at Catherine with uncertainty. He was no more than 20. "Let's ride, boys," Cap commanded. They turned their horses around. 5 silhouettes riding away. The dust raised by their hooves slowly settled on Catherine's face. Her pain was nothing compared to the pain of realizing this betrayal. She was completely alone. Tears streamed down her cheeks, mixing with the dust. She closed her eyes. "This is the end." And then something unexpected happened. One of the silhouettes stopped. Young Johnny. He turned his head, his eyes meeting her tear-filled ones. He saw not just a dying woman, but a person who had lost everything. His lips trembled. Something inside him broke. Maybe he remembered his mother, or his sister, or just human compassion. He knew this act would go against Cap's will, but he couldn't just ride past. Catherine struggled to lift her head. Her hope, almost extinguished, flared up again. "Cap, I have to. I can't," Johnny shouted, his voice trembling. Cap, turning around, looked at him with a mix of annoyance and weariness. "Johnny, don't be a fool. The rules are different here." But Johnny had already made his decision. He sharply turned his horse and galloped back. Cap shook his head. He didn't try to stop him, but he didn't follow either. The 4 riders moved on, leaving Johnny alone. The young man rode up to Catherine, dismounted, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know what to do. He had no doctor's skills, and no experience helping the dying either. But he couldn't leave her. I came back," he said, as if that explained everything. Catherine couldn't reply. She just squeezed his hand, and in that weak gesture there was more gratitude than in all the words. Johnny quickly looked around. He had to act, and act fast. Johnny, without a second thought, rushed to help Catherine. Despite his youth, he was a strong guy, accustomed to hard work on the ranch, and he quickly assessed the situation. He understood that without urgent help, she wouldn't survive. First, he carefully examined her leg. It was an open fracture. A shard of bone was sticking out of the flesh, and the sight of it made Johnny shudder. Miss Mason, I don't know what to do," he stammered, feeling fear creep into every cell of his body. He was a simple cowboy, not a doctor, and he didn't know how to handle such a serious injury. Catherine, overcoming the pain, slowly looked away from her leg. She knew she had only one chance, and it was Johnny. "Listen to me carefully, Bo. Find the iron chest. There's something in there." Her voice was barely audible. Johnny quickly found the chest she indicated and opened it. Inside, among her personal belongings, he found several folded bandages, a flask of whiskey, and a small bottle of some kind of liquid. This is iodine. Cauterize the wound. It's going to hurt, but it's the only chance. And then bandage it with the bandages," Catherine whispered. Johnny froze. He was terrified. He had never done anything like this. He simply couldn't believe he was about to inflict pain on someone he was trying to help. His hands trembled as he opened the bottle. The guilt of not being able to find another way gripped his heart. I don't know," he stammered. "Turn around. I'll do it," Catherine unexpectedly suggested. Despite her weakness, she gathered all her will. She knew that only she could force herself to endure this terrible pain, knowing it was the only way out. Johnny couldn't. He wasn't ready for this. Johnny obeyed, understanding she was right. He turned away. He could hear her gritting her teeth. He heard her hiss, but he didn't see it. He felt like the most pathetic and helpless person on earth. After finishing with the bandages, Johnny picked Catherine up, surprised at how light she was, and placed her on his horse. It was difficult for her to keep her balance, but she held on to him tightly. He sat behind her and slowly guided the horse forward. He didn't know where they were going. He just rode, hoping that sooner or later they would find help. As they rode, Johnny felt her breathing become more and more labored. He realized she needed water. He handed her the flask she had brought with her. This isn't all. I have an apple," Catherine whispered. She took an apple out of her pocket, the last thing she had. Johnny took the apple. He looked at it, and tears glistened in his eyes. He knew she was giving him the last thing she had. He split the apple in two and gave her half. They ate in silence, each understanding that this gesture meant more than words. A night passed, followed by a long and grueling day. They rode a few more miles before stumbling upon an old cabin, which seemed to be abandoned. "Here, we can wait it out," Catherine whispered. Johnny carefully helped her dismount, and they went into the cabin. It was dusty and dark inside, but it was their salvation. Here they could rest and gather their thoughts. He built a fire, and its warmth soothed their exhausted bodies. Johnny spent the next few days caring for Catherine. He brought her water from a nearby stream, gathered firewood, and tried to find food. He tried not to think about the fact that they were alone in the middle of the desert, and that help might never come. Catherine, meanwhile, was slowly recovering. She was a strong-willed woman and wasn't going to give up. She told Johnny about her life, about how she dreamed of her own farm, about how she hoped to find her place on this land. Listening to her, Johnny understood that she wasn't just a dreamer, but a strong and determined woman. He admired her resilience. He finally began to understand that her story wasn't just a story about a broken dream, but a story about her fight for her life. They spent 2 more days in the cabin. Catherine's wounds were healing, but slowly. Johnny, who had very little food left, knew they had to move on. We have to go," he said to Catherine. She nodded. She knew he was right. They set off at dawn the next day. Johnny with difficulty helped her onto the horse, and they rode slowly. He was careful not to cause her pain, and every time she hissed from pain, his heart ached. They rode until they saw a small settlement on the horizon. It felt like salvation. Johnny felt a wave of relief wash over his body. He quickened his pace, his heart pounding in his chest. They rode into the settlement, and Johnny felt curious glances on him. They were here. They were saved. He tied up the horse and carefully helped Catherine down. "Help. We need help," he mumbled, addressing a man who was standing nearby. The man, who turned out to be the local doctor, examined Catherine. He shook his head. "The wound. It's very deep. And her leg. The fracture is very serious. I don't know." He hesitated. Johnny felt his hope crumble. He couldn't believe they had been so close to salvation, but it turned out to be only temporary relief. He couldn't understand why this was happening. Catherine, seeing his despair, placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't give up. We'll find another way." They stayed in the settlement for several days. The doctor did what he could to help Catherine, but her condition didn't improve. The fever was rising. Johnny didn't leave her side for a moment. He tried to support her, but his heart was heavy with fear. One night, when the fever peaked, Catherine began to hallucinate. She talked about her family, about her dream. Johnny listened to her, and it pained him to hear her suffering. He decided he couldn't just watch her fade away. He had to do something. He went to the doctor. I have to do something. Is there anything else that can help?" The doctor looked at him with sympathy. "The only thing that can help is a strong antibiotic, but we don't have it here. It's only available in a big city, in Tacoma." Johnny knew that Tacoma was the city they were heading to, and he knew it was very far away. I'll go get it," he said. The doctor shook his head. "It's very far, Bo. You'll have to cross the prairie, which is full of bandits and wild animals. It's dangerous. You might not come back." I have to try," Johnny said firmly. He went back to Catherine and told her his decision. She couldn't speak, but her eyes, full of tears, expressed everything she was feeling. He bent down and kissed her on the forehead. "I'll be back, Catherine. I promise." He walked out of the cabin. It was a dark night, but he wasn't afraid. His heart was full of determination. He was ready to do anything to save Catherine. He got on his horse and galloped into the night, towards Tacoma. He didn't know what awaited him, but he was ready for any challenges. He was ready to fight for Catherine's life. The journey to Tacoma turned out to be longer and more dangerous than Johnny could have imagined. During the day, the sun beat down mercilessly, and at night, the prairie cold chilled him to the bone. He had to desperately conserve water, which he shared with his horse, and live on only dry meat. His heart was filled with anxiety for Catherine, and that anxiety pushed him forward. He knew that every hour of delay could cost her her life. On the third day of his journey, when his strength was almost gone, he saw the outline of a ranch in the distance. He hoped he could get help there, food, and perhaps a fresh horse. But the closer he got, the more he felt something was wrong. A strange silence reigned over the ranch. The corral was empty, and the house door was locked. Johnny dismounted and cautiously approached the house. On the steps, he noticed someone's wide-brimmed hat. It was the same hat that Calvin Cap Blackwood wore. Johnny's heart froze. He immediately remembered that Cap and his men had said they were going to Tacoma. So what were they doing here? Johnny quickly looked around the area. In the dust near the barn, he saw their horses' tracks. He also noticed something shiny on the ground. It was a silver badge he had seen on one of the bandits' vests. This badge belonged to Sammy. And then he heard a voice. It was coming from the barn. "I told you, old man, we weren't coming back. No one survives out here alone. Give me the money, and I'll leave you in peace." It was Sammy's voice. It was full of malice and desperation. Everything inside Johnny clenched. He couldn't believe his comrades had abandoned him, and now, it seemed, they were robbing someone. His belief in their brotherhood, which was already on the brink, finally collapsed. Johnny, composing himself, carefully approached the barn and peered through a crack. He saw Sammy holding a pistol, aimed at an old man sitting on a bale of straw. The old man was in rags, but his eyes burned with fury. "You betrayed us, Sammy. You and your friends. You left us here to die," the old man shouted. Johnny couldn't believe his ears. What was happening? He froze, trying to understand this madness. We didn't leave anyone. We just took what we needed and moved on. You and your companion wouldn't have survived anyway, so what was the point of helping? Sammy replied. Then Johnny understood that the old man was talking about himself and someone else. Who and where were the others? At that moment, from the depths of the barn, a groan was heard. Johnny peered through the crack again. There, in the darkness, he saw another person. It was Louis, the silent one. He was covered in blood, his arm was bandaged, and his face was pale. Johnny understood everything. They had also been traveling together, but something had happened, and they had split up. It seemed that Sammy and Cap had attacked their comrades to take everything from them. Johnny felt a wave of disgust run through his body. He knew he had to act, but how? He was alone against an armed bandit, but he couldn't just walk away, not after everything they had done. He decided he had to act with cunning. He shouted loudly, imitating Cap's voice, "Sammy, what are you doing? We agreed to split everything fairly." Sammy flinched. He immediately turned and aimed his pistol at the door. He hadn't expected Cap to come back. Johnny, using the moment, quickly darted from behind the barn and crept to the window. He saw Sammy standing with his back to him, looking around nervously. "Cap, is that you?" "It's me, Sammy," he yelled. Johnny knew he had only one chance. He got ready. He knew that if he missed, it would be over. At that moment, the old man sitting on the bale shouted, "Shoot him, Bo. He killed my brother." Johnny immediately realized that the old man was the silent one's brother, and that Sammy had not only robbed them, but had killed one of them. Johnny felt anger overwhelm him. He couldn't believe his comrades were so cruel. Sammy, hearing the shout, turned around. He saw Johnny. He was in shock. He hadn't expected Johnny to be here. His face contorted with rage. You came back," he mumbled. Johnny didn't answer. He just drew his pistol and fired. The bullet hit Sammy right in the shoulder. He screamed in pain and fell. The pistol dropped from his hand. Johnny quickly entered the barn. He ran up to Sammy and kicked the pistol out of his hand. Then he examined the silent one. His wound was deep, but he was alive. The old man who was with him quickly went to him and began to help him. "Thank you, boy. You saved us," the old man said. Johnny just nodded. He was devastated. He couldn't believe what he had just done, but he knew it was the right thing to do. He told the old man about his situation, about Catherine, and about why he was there. The old man, who turned out to be a farmer named George, listened to him and said, "You're a good boy, Johnny. I'll help you. I'll give you the best horse and food so you can get to Tacoma." Johnny was grateful. He knew this gesture meant everything to him. Sammy, meanwhile, lay on the ground, writhing in pain. Johnny walked up to him. Sammy, why did you do this?" he asked. Sammy, with difficulty, replied, "Money, boy, money." Cap said that's the only way we could get it. He said it was the only way to survive. Johnny shook his head. He didn't believe him. He knew that deep down they were just greedy and cruel people. "And where are Cap and the others?" Johnny asked. Sammy, with a smirk, replied, "They left. They went to Tacoma. They thought I'd die here. But I'll survive, and I'll get my revenge." Johnny realized that Sammy wasn't just a bandit, but a man driven by revenge. He understood that their meeting wasn't over yet. Johnny left George's ranch at dawn. Now he was on a strong, fresh horse, with full supplies of food and water. But the main thing he carried with him was not provisions, but determination. He knew he had to not only save Catherine, but also confront those who had abandoned her. He arrived in Tacoma 2 days later. The city was bustling and alive, but Johnny felt like a stranger. He quickly found the apothecary's shop, bought the necessary antibiotic, and hurried back. On the way back, he didn't encounter anyone. He was on guard, but Cap and his men had apparently already left the city. Upon returning to the settlement, Johnny felt a great sense of relief. Catherine was alive. She was still weak, but the fever had broken. The doctor said his antibiotic had saved her life. When Johnny entered the room, she smiled at him, and her smile was brighter than the sun. "You came back. I knew you would," she whispered. Johnny couldn't hold back his tears. He felt immense guilt for having left her, but at the same time, he was so happy that he had been able to save her. Johnny spent the next few weeks caring for Catherine. He helped her recover, told her about his adventures, and they became truly close. He learned that she was a school teacher in a small town back east, and that she had lost all her savings when her bank went under. She decided to start a new life and headed west, where she hoped to find her place. One day, Catherine told him, "Johnny, I know you're a good person. You saved me when others just rode past. You showed me that kindness and mercy still exist in this world." Johnny looked down, embarrassed. "I just did what I had to do." "No," Catherine replied. "You did what no one else would have. You took a huge risk for a stranger. You sacrificed your safety for me. That is true heroism." At that moment, 4 riders entered the settlement. It was Cap, Jess, Red, and another cowboy. They were returning from Tacoma, and it seemed they were very surprised to see Johnny. Cap dismounted. He walked up to Johnny, and his face was a mix of confusion. "Johnny, you're alive. How did you get here?" he asked. Johnny didn't answer. He just looked at him. He saw in his eyes not malice, but surprise and, perhaps, even envy. Cap hadn't expected Johnny to survive. He thought he was just another victim of the Wild West. Johnny knew this was his chance. He decided he wouldn't seek revenge. He wouldn't fight them. He would simply show them that they were wrong. "I came back, Cap," he said. "I came back for her." He pointed to Catherine. "I didn't abandon her, like you did." Cap remained silent. He just shook his head. "You're a fool, Johnny. You could have been rich. We found a gold mine, but you still stayed with her." Johnny smirked. "Gold isn't worth losing yourself. You lost not only gold, but also your humanity." Cap and his men turned and rode away. They left, leaving behind only dust and shame. Johnny and Catherine stayed in the settlement. They decided they would stay here and start a new life together. Catherine, with her knowledge, became a school teacher, and Johnny began helping the farmers, teaching them new methods of farming. They built their own family and became an example for all the residents. Conclusion and lesson for the modern world: the story of Catherine and Johnny, which took place in the Wild West in the 1880s, is filled with events, but its essence lies in its simplicity. It's a story about the choice that each of us makes every day. The cowboys who rode past a dying woman chose survival at any cost, putting their own interests above the life of another person. They were convinced that in a world where lawlessness and cruelty reigned, this was the only way to survive. They lost their souls in the pursuit of profit, leaving behind not only a dying woman, but also their humanity. And Johnny, a young and inexperienced bow, chose mercy. He could have left with his comrades, but he couldn't. His heart wouldn't let him ride past. He was willing to take a risk to save a stranger, and in the end, he not only saved her, but also found something much more valuable than gold. He found himself, his strength, and his belief in goodness. This is the main lesson for modern grandmas and grandpas. Today, just like in the 1880s, the world often seems cruel and unfair. People still ride past others' troubles, busy with their own affairs, their gold mines, careers, wealth, success. But it is in such moments that the true strength of spirit is revealed. It is not about being the fastest or the strongest, but about having a heart that can empathize and a hand that is ready to help. Kindness never gets old, and it always bears fruit, even if not always in monetary terms. This is what makes us human. This is what helps us build a better world, starting with one small act of mercy.